Hi, my name is Anna, and welcome to 418 Astrology. One of the things that I'm trying to do with 418 Astrology is really to teach the essence of what astrology is all about. You can use astrology yourself, or read about it, or involve it in your life in any number of ways without understanding how it works. And in the modern age, we're used to that. We all use computers, and most of us don't understand how they work. And if we understand how the computer works, then we certainly haven't had the time to learn how the car works. These things are all we use them without thinking about how they work or what they mean. But astrology is interesting to think about because, technically speaking, it shouldn't work, at least not by how we understand science. Nonetheless, it works anyway, which is one of the reasons that I think many astrologers, including myself, get pulled into astrology. Is we notice that it works, and then we become very fascinated with, well, what else can this tell us? And of course, one of the most interesting things to know about astrology is, how does it actually work? Not many astrologers have a good answer for this. We all more or less agree that it's energy, and there might be vague answers after that. I've come up with something that I think explains how astrology works, and therefore our whole universe, in what my theory of it implies. This is a big part of it, what I'm about to tell you now, my personal theory about how astrology actually works. So we know it's not the gravity of the planets. Jupiter is massive, but it's too far away for its gravity to have enough energy, have enough pull on us to change our personality or change our fate. From our measurements of gravity and what gravity does, that just doesn't line up. And there are other theories that people have put forth for why astrology might work, but none of them hold up from a scientific model. And astrology and science are two different ways of approaching reality, two different thoughts, although they come from a common root, which is the human desire to understand. And in future videos, we can talk more about that. But to get back to how astrology actually works, my theory is that according to astrology, we are all living in sort of what you could see as a mystical clock. And that mystical clock is the solar system. This actually lines up very well with how science understands the solar system. One of the ways that we measure time is by the movement of the different planets through the solar system, and our own planet's movement through the solar system, however we measure that stuff. And astrology's idea is actually extremely similar, because time and space are one and the same, according to science. And the movement of these planets through time and space is one of the ways that we measure time. And time, when you look into it from a scientific perspective, becomes very complicated and very thorny to understand. It is a lot easier to understand the idea that we live inside a mystical clock. So what does that mean? That means that the planets, as we know them, are hands on that clock. Instead of just having two hands, we've got, as many hands as you can handle. But the important thing is that these planets all move at their own individual rate. And because there's so many of them, and because some of them move so slowly, it shows us that each moment is as unique as a fingerprint. And so a snapshot of this clock on the day that you were born, at the moment that you were born, which is what your astrology chart is, a snapshot of the clock at that moment is as unique as a fingerprint. And it's a unique moment in space and in time, represented symbolically. The other thing that's important to know about the idea of the solar system as a mystical clock, astrology's viewpoint of all this, is what's at the center of this clock? It's you. And it's not just you, it's your perspective. It's your viewpoint. Astrology will tell you everything you want to know about your experience, which is a little bit different than the concrete, objective, everyday reality. Astrology is subjective. In many other parts of our lives, we try to be objective. But astrology is very much from your individual viewpoint in space and time. Your birth chart is done for the moment in space, the town you were born, and time, the time you were born, that unique moment in space and time where a new being that is you came into the world. Snap the picture. That's your astrology chart, as many of us know. And so everything in that astrology chart is from your point of view. It's you that's at the center of this clock from astrology's point of view. And astrology means this in a very literal way too, in the sense that you are right now standing at the center of that clock. And if you look around you and the moon happens to be up, there's one of the hands on the clock. Oh, Venus is in the night sky over there. There's another hand on the clock. And you right here, looking outward, are at the center of it. We're all at the center of our own clock. And obviously, your clock, even if you're sitting next to me, is going to be a little bit different than mine because of the differences in the way things look when you're a little bit further away. And if you're a lot further away, the clock looks a whole lot different. The movement of the planets in the sky and the way that they seem to you at any given time is the essence of astrology. Astrology is about our inner experience. How many hands on the clock? And this is a very unscientific and astrological drawing. It's just made so to essentially to help teach this concept of the solar system as a mystical clock with you at the center. So what are these hands on the clock? I mean, I drew the sun in here. The sun is a planet in astrology because it's one of the things that we see moving through the sky from our point of view, like the other planets do, the sun and the moon. And so I've got the moon, I've got the sun, that could be the moon, Saturn. I've got some planets here. How many of the planets are hands on the clock, you might ask? Because there's a whole lot of things out there beyond what I've drawn here. I mean, there's 7 traditional planets that they use in astrology. The answer to that is unlimited. You can use asteroids. You can use what do they call them? Trans-Neptunian objects. You can use anything that can be that is moving around in this clock can be a hand on that clock. And because of that, it has its own meaning. It just depends on how complicated of a clock you want to read. In fact, to emphasize the magnificence of this clock, this mystical clock that we are all at the center of, it's not just our solar system that's the clock, it's the whole universe. And so instead of thinking like this is just the solar system is the one clock, no, the universe contains all these different clock faces that are all the other solar systems working together, and the whole matrix of time and space in between. That's the world we live in. But that stuff, I drew a little galaxy here to emphasize that stuff that's happening in the other solar systems, from our point of view, again, the center of the clock is you. From our point of view, it doesn't matter very much because we can't see it. It's a tiny pinprick in our experience. Whereas the sun, Saturn, Venus, we can see them. They're important from our point of view. And so not only are we living in a mystical clock, it's an enormously immense mystical clock. But the part that's important is the part that's close to us, because we're also living, according to astrology, in this subjective universe. Now, the other fun thing about this clock that astrology gives us is astrology gives us meaning. And this meaning has been woven into the human experience of the planets for as long as we've been human. We've contemplated the sun and the moon, and it's a short jump to Venus and Jupiter from there. We've been looking at these planets and feeling them since whatever moment it was that we became human. We've been doing that. And each of these bodies the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the 7 traditional planets, the ones you can see with your naked eye, they have taken on their own meaning, really all the way down through society. That's really been passed down to us. One of the things that we complain about, and rightfully so, is that modern life lacks meaning. What's the point of anything? What's the purpose of anything? The meaning is given to us by astrology in part, but this part of the meaning is that this is as old and as powerful and as symbolic as it is. So each of these 7 traditional planets, and you can use other things too beyond the 7 traditional planets, but certainly the 7 traditional planets, at least the way I would describe it, are the biggest hands on the clock, and the other hands are littler. So just going by the big hands on the clock, so to speak, those 7 big hands, these are the gods of old time, in terms of there's Mars, there's Jupiter, there's Venus, and then there's also the divine part of you, which is the sun and the moon, and that's represented as bigger to you from your point of view. The sun and the moon are the biggest things in the sky. The gods like Jupiter, Venus, they're further out, they're smaller, but they're also eternal. We've been looking at the same Jupiter as someone on the other side of the planet right now. And your grandfather saw the same Jupiter, and Walt Whitman saw the same Jupiter, and Julius Caesar saw the same Jupiter. These things from our point of view really are immortal. And the planets in astrology have taken on quite a bit of meaning, in that they are gods, they are forces, they're elements of a story. And as the hands on the clock move, as time and space move forward into each unique moment, these symbols that are the planets combine and recombine in various ways, and it all has meaning. And astrology is the science of understanding that meaning. One of the names that I've come up with for astrology is story clock, because that's essentially the view of the universe as a clock with all these characters on the hands of them that combine and recombine endlessly as time moves on. And every moment is unique. And where is it all going? I don't know. We can project further into the future and know what the charts will look like, but what the updated meaning of everything will be is sort of up to our subjective point of view. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and I'll be back soon with more videos.